Excuse me, madam, it's Mr. and Mrs. Bowen.
Oh, hello, Inspector. We didn't realise you were here.
Well, I just dropped in to have a word with Mrs. Stewart about... What is it, Mrs. Stewart?
Diana, are you all right?
Don't feel very well. I think I'm...
Try and get her to drink this.
I'll be all right. I just feel faint. Thelma, what happened tonight?
What happened?
Yes. What happened? I saw you at Miss Tracy's. I thought you...
I think we'd better get a doctor, don't you, Inspector? Which doctor does she have, Mrs. Bowen? Have you any idea?
What? Oh, I think it's Dr. Duxon, Allenbury, 6270.
No, wait, please. I should be all right. No need for a doctor. I just felt faint, that's all. Sorry, Inspector, I haven't been sleeping very well.
No, I don't expect you have, Mrs. Stewart.
I've been expecting this to happen. I said to my wife only last night, I said...
Walter, tell Mrs. Houston we want her.
I think you'd better get her to bed, Mrs. Bowen.
Yes, I think so too. Come along, Diana.
I feel so incredibly light-headed.
Let's get you upstairs. You'll feel better when you're in bed. Mrs. Stewart doesn't feel very well, Mrs. Houston. We're putting her to bed.
Yes, of course. Come along, Mrs.
Please
Stewart.
don't fuss. I shall be perfectly all right. I just fainted, that's all.
Yes, of course, dear.
Sorry, Inspector.
That's all right, Mrs. Stewart. We'll continue our little chat some other time.
Mr. Paxton, I'll try and go through those papers tomorrow. Give me a ring.
Yes, of course, Mrs. Stewart. Not to worry.
Was Mrs. Stewart feeling off colour earlier, sir?
I really don't know, Inspector. I'd only been here about 5 minutes when you arrived. Mrs. Stewart telephoned me about an hour ago and said she wanted to see me about some business.
I take it yours was just a social call, Mr. Bowen.
Well, no, not exactly. My wife was very worried about what you told me, Inspector, about the telephone call, I mean. In the end, we both thought it would be a good idea if we had it out with Diana.
Well, I don't think you'd have got very far, sir.
What do you mean?
Mrs. Stewart still sticks to her story. She said it was your wife who received the call.
But that's not true, I assure you it isn't. I was in all morning. If my wife had received that call, I'd certainly have known about it.
I think I should answer that, Mr. Paxton. You can always take a message, sir.
Hello?
Is that Allenbury 8130?
Yes?
Could I speak to Mrs. Stewart, please?
I'm sorry, it's rather difficult at the moment. Who is that?
This is Nigel Mills, Mrs. Stewart's solicitor.
Oh, hello, Mr. Mills. This is Mark Paxton.
Good evening, Mr. Paxton. I thought I recognized your voice.
Mr. Mills, I'm sorry, but Mrs. Stewart's just gone to bed, and I'd rather not disturb her if you don't mind. She hasn't been feeling too well.
Yes, of course, I understand.
Is there anything I can do?
No, I'm afraid not. I just wanted to... I was going to ask Mrs. Stewart if I could call round and see her sometime tomorrow morning. It is rather urgent, I'm afraid.
Would 10:30 be convenient?
Yes, that would suit me admirably, if it's all right for Mrs. Stewart. Though, let's say 10:30, unless I hear from you to the contrary. How's that?
Yes, I'm sure that should be all right.
Thank you, Mr. Paxton. I'm obliged to you.
Goodbye.
Bye.
How is she, Thelma?
I don't think it's anything serious, but she still complains of feeling dizzy.
You didn't say anything
No,
about...
I didn't, Walter. You can't talk to her about anything, not at the moment. She's not really with you. You've probably guessed why we're here, Inspector.
I've just been talking to the Inspector, Thelma. Diana still sticks to her story. She still says it was you that received that telephone call.
She said that again tonight.
Yes, madam, I'm afraid she did. Mrs. Bowen, what did Mrs. Stewart mean when she said, "What happened tonight, I saw you at Miss Tracy's"?
I don't know. I don't know what she meant. I just couldn't understand it.
Have you any idea what she meant, dear boy?
No, I'm afraid I haven't.
Who's Miss Tracy, anyway?
The only Miss Tracy I know is the one in Station Street.
Oh, that little woman with the sweet shop.
That's right, but I hardly know the woman. And I certainly haven't seen her for ages.
Oh, I'm sorry, sir. Does this bother you?
No, not at all.
Are you sure?
Yes, of course.
It's extraordinary. It never occurs to me I might be making a nuisance of myself. A girl told me off one night in a restaurant. Ye God, she tore me off a strip. Good-looking girl, too. Mrs. Stewart's a good-looking woman, isn't she, son?
Yes, I suppose she is. I hadn't really thought about it, Inspector.
Drop me off at the corner of Station Street, Mr. Paxton. That'll do me nicely. Thank you, Mr. Mills. I'll be with you in about 15 minutes, sir. Yes, I do know the house, sir. Thank you.
The doctor says she's been dead for about 2 hours, possibly 3. Certainly no more.
Yes, that's what I thought. Right. Now listen, everybody. Whoever did this was looking for something, and that isn't to say he found it. I want this place searched from top to bottom. This room, the bedroom, the stairs, the whole damn place.
What are we looking for?
I don't know, but find it. I'll be back in an hour.
Well, get on with it.
That's it, just along there to the right.
Thank you, sir. It was very good of you to see me at a moment's notice, sir. I do appreciate it.
Oh, that's all right, Inspector. Take a pew.
Thank you, sir.
Can I offer you a drink?
I won't say no to a whiskey and soda, sir. I believe you have an appointment with Mrs. Stewart in the morning, sir.
Yes, I have, and I can't say I'm looking forward to it.
No, sir?
Definitely no, Inspector. But how did you know about the appointment?
I was at the house when you telephoned.
Oh, I see.
Thank you, sir. Very nice.
And, what can I do for you, Inspector?
I imagine you've read the news, sir. Mr. Stewart, the motel.
Yes, an appalling business. Have you any idea who did it?
Yes, since you ask me, I have. Now, may I ask you a question?
Certainly, go ahead.
I understand your firm acted for Mr. Stewart.
Yes, we did a certain amount of work for him, but I'm afraid he was rather an unsatisfactory client. What is it you're curious about, Inspector? What is it you want to know?
I'm curious about his will, sir.
His will?
I'd like to know who the beneficiaries are.
And I suggest you ask Mrs. Stewart tomorrow morning. She'll be able to tell you.
I'm asking you, sir, and I don't want to know tomorrow morning. I want to know now. Tonight.
Oh, now, really.
Mr. Mills, a moment ago you asked me if I knew who the murderer was, and I was frank with you. I said I did.
Well?
Well, under the circumstances, sir, don't you think that you two could stretch a point? Take me into your confidence?
Just over 2 years ago, Mr. and Mrs. Stewart came to see me. They'd been married about 18 months, and Geoffrey, Mr. Stewart, said he wanted to make a new will. We discussed the details, and eventually I drew up the document. With the exception of one bequest, £1,000 to his housekeeper, he left everything to his wife.
Go on, sir.
Well, about a month ago, I had a call from Geoffrey Stewart to come round and see him on urgent business. I drove round to the house, and he presented me with this envelope. He said it contained a new will, one he just had drawn up, and he didn't want his wife or anyone else to know anything about it.
Yes, sir.
Well, I took the envelope away with me.
Was he telling the truth?
Yes, he was telling the truth, all right. The will was drawn up by a firm of solicitors in London, a very reputable firm, I might add. It was signed in their office on July the 10th, just 5 weeks ago.
Well, sir?
He's left £1,000 to his housekeeper, £9,000 to his wife, and the residue of his estate, which incidentally I should estimate to be somewhere in the region of £750,000, to a Miss Diana Valesco of 33 Franklin Terrace, Chelsea, London, SW1.
Diana Valesco? Who the devil's Diana Valesco?
That's precisely what Mrs. Stewart's going to ask me tomorrow morning. I wish I knew the answer.
Please, wait a moment.
Miss Valesco?
Yes?
My name is Clay, Detective Inspector Clay.
You are from the police?
My card.
Oh, please, come in.
Thank you. Very charming Clay.
Thank you, Inspector. That's why you came, because of Jeffrey.
Yes, I suppose you've heard the news.
I heard this evening. It was on the radio.
Miss Valesco, I'm investigating this case, and I think, in fact, I feel sure that you can help me.
I'll tell you anything you want to know.
Thank you.
But first, please, you must tell me something.
Of course.
How did you find out about me? How did you know this address?
It was in the will.
The will?
Yes, Geoffrey Stewart's will. He made a new one quite recently.
And my name is mentioned in the will?
Yes, yes, it is. You seem surprised.
But I'm very surprised.
Yes. Yes, well, that's not why I called here. You'll hear about the will later from someone else. Miss Valesco, tell me about your friendship with Mr. Stewart. When did you first meet him? How did you meet him?
We met about 6 months ago,
Where?
here in London.
Hello?
Sergeant, this is Clay.
Oh, hello, sir. We wondered what had happened to you. You said you'd be back in an hour.
Yes, I'm sorry, Sergeant. I had to come up to London to see someone. Any news? Have you found anything?
Yes, sir. We found several interesting things, but whether we found what they were looking for, I don't know.
What have you found?
Could we discuss this later, sir?
Yes, all right. I make it 11:45. Take me an hour and a half to get back to Allenbury. I think we'd better meet in my office booth.
Very good, sir.
Mr. Tallboy, in?
I think he's in his workshop.
Morning, Mr. Tallboy. Spare me a moment, sir.
Yes, of course. Come right in, Inspector. What can I do for you?
I'm making inquiries about a Miss Tracy, sir. She runs a sweet shop, or rather...
Kitty Tracy?
That's right, sir.
Yeah, I know Miss Tracy. She's a tenant of mine.
So I gathered.
Has something happened to Miss Tracy?
May I sit down, sir?
Yes, of course.
Miss Tracy was murdered last night, sir. She was stabbed to death. According to the doctor's report...
Kitty Tracy? No, I don't believe it.
I'm afraid it's true, sir.
Well, why on earth should anyone want to murder Miss Tracy?
Well, I don't know why, sir. That's why I came to see you. I was hoping you might be able to help me answer that question.
Well, I'll certainly help you if I can, Inspector. What is it you want to know?
How well did you know Miss Tracy?
Well, I hardly knew her at all. About 2 years ago, I bought some property in Station Street. Kitty Tracy's and Felton's, the newsagents. It was purely an investment on my part. I didn't want possession of the property. At first, Miss Tracy was difficult. Damn difficult. I think she thought I was trying to evict her, which wasn't true, incidentally. But after a while, she calmed down all right.
What do you mean when you say she was difficult, sir?
Well, she refused to pay her rent, and she wrote me 2 absolutely stinking letters about the property.
Have you got the letter, sir?
No, I'm afraid I haven't. I threw them away. I don't want to sound unkind, Inspector, but she was a bit dotty, you know. No one ever took her seriously.
Well, somebody did, sir. Otherwise, why was she murdered?
Yes, I see what you mean. Oh, I beg your pardon.
Mr. Tallboy, if I take you into my confidence, will you be perfectly frank with me about something?
Oh, yes.
I think Kitty Tracy was blackmailing Mr. Stewart. I think she'd been doing it for some considerable time.
Kitty Tracy blackmailing Geoffrey Stewart?
Yes, sir.
Oh, that's absurd.
No, I don't think so. It's my bet that in the last 12 months she's had close to £2,000 from him.
What was she blackmailing him about?
Don't you know, Mr. Tallboy?
Me? No, I don't.
Several days ago, the day Mr. Stewart was murdered, I asked you how long you'd known Mr. Stewart, and you said 10 years.
Well,
Long time, 10 years. Get to know a man very well in that time.
what are you suggesting, old man?
Did you know he was having an affair with a girl called Diana Valesco?
Oh, well, I knew there was a Popsy somewhere in the background, but he never told me who she was.
Just told you he had a girlfriend?
No, he didn't even tell me that. Well, to be perfectly honest, I saw him one night in town at a nightclub. He was with a tall, dark, good-looking girl. They were dancing cheek to cheek, and I got the message.
Why didn't you tell me about all this, Mr. Tallboy?
Well, I just didn't think it was important
You
enough.
must have known it was important.
Well, I'm very sorry, Inspector.
Just didn't want to get involved, was that it? Did you tell Stewart you'd seen him?
Well, I hinted at it.
What does that mean?
Well, we had a few words one day about a car he'd borrowed. He was a pretty rotten driver, and I told him he ought to stick to dancing.
And what did Stewart say?
Oh, he just laughed it off, but he knew what I meant all right. What did you say the name of this girl was? The girl I saw him with?
Well, if it's the same one, her name's Valesco, Diana Valesco. She's an Italian.
That's her, all right. Tall, dark, and very good looking.
That's right, sir.
Yes, quite a dish, in fact. By George, I bet she was expensive.
I don't think you've quite got the picture, Mr. Tallboy.
No?
No. Mr. Stewart was serious about this girl. Very serious. He's even mentioned her in his will.
In his will? Do you mean he's left her something?
Only the jackpot, sir.
For God's sake, Diana, tell me what he said.
I told you.
You keep telling me what you think. I don't want to know what you think. I want to know precisely what Mills said.
Please! Geoffrey made a new will
When?
about a month ago.
Did Mills draw it up?
No, it was done in London. I think he said the firm was called Belton and Rice.
I know Belton and Rice. Our firms had dealings with them. They're well known.
That's what Mills said.
Well, go on.
That's all there is. He left £1,000 to Mrs. Houston, £9,000 to me, and everything else to this girl.
Everything?
Yes, everything. I'm not exaggerating, Mark. Literally everything.
I don't believe it. I just don't believe it.
Well, it's true.
Did you know about this girl?
Of course I didn't.
You've never even heard of her?
Of course I hadn't heard of it. If I'd heard of her, I would have told you about her.
My God, after all that's happened, after all we've been through this past week,
What are we going to do?
there's only one thing you can do, contest the will.
But that could take months.
Doesn't matter how long it takes, you've got to do it. Now listen, Diana, first thing in the morning.
Mark, what is it? What is it?
What did you say she was called, this girl?
Valesco.
And where does she live?
Oh, I think Mills said Chelsea. Franklin Terrace. Why? Mark, what is it?
Diana, I want you to forget what I said just now. I don't want you to do anything. I don't want you to do anything, not for 48 hours, you understand?
All right, Mark.
Chelsea 2975.
Could I speak to Miss Valesco, please?
Who is that speaking?
My name is Paxton, Mark Paxton. I'm a friend. Or rather, I was a friend of Geoffrey Stewart's.
This is Diana Valesco speaking.
Oh, good afternoon, Miss Valesco. I'm terribly sorry to trouble you, but do you think we could meet sometime? There's something I'd very much like to talk to you about.
Well, it's a little difficult at the moment because I'm thinking of going away. Is it urgent, Mr. Paxton?
Yes, I'm rather afraid it is. Believe me, Miss Valesco, I wouldn't dream of troubling you if it wasn't important.
Would this evening be convenient to you?
Yes, it would. It would suit me admirably. 7 o'clock?
Very well, 7 o'clock. My address?
Yes, I have the address, thank you. 33 Franklin Terrace, Chelsea.
Yes, that's right.
Thank you, Miss Valesco. Miss Valeska,
Yes?
I'm Mark Paxton.
Oh, yes, please, come in.
Thank you.
Would you excuse me? I won't be a moment.
Yes, of course.
Good evening, Mr. Paxton. Do sit down, sir.
I didn't expect to find you here, Inspector.
No, I don't expect you did, sir. I had an appointment with Miss Valeska, and when I heard that you were dropping in, I wanted to chat with you, so I thought we might as well do it here as anywhere else.
Yes. Yes, well, what is it you wanted to have a chat about?
Mrs. Stewart, sir.
Mrs. Stewart?
Yes. How long have you known Mrs. Stewart, sir?
About 2 or 3 years, I suppose.
Would you say she was a friend of yours?
Good heavens, no. Well, naturally, I've seen quite a lot of her just lately, but she certainly isn't a friend of mine, Inspector.
Then would you mind explaining something to me, sir?
Certainly, if I can.
If Mrs. Stewart isn't a friend of yours, why did you take her to the theatre, the Criterion Theatre, on the night of March the 18th?
March the 18th?
Yes, sir.
But I didn't.
I think you did, sir. You took Mrs. Stewart to the theatre, and then you had dinner, both of you, afterwards at a little restaurant in Soho.
Yes, that's right, we did. Yes, you're absolutely right, Inspector. I'm terribly sorry. Yes, that was the night Mr. Stewart was taken ill. Well, not really ill. He had a bilious attack. Yes, Mr. Stewart was taking his wife to the theatre, and he had to cry off at the last moment, so...
Go on, sir.
Well, sir, he telephoned me and asked me if I'd take her.
Wasn't that a little unusual?
Yes, it was. I was very surprised, but there was nothing I could do about it. The boss's wife. What could I do, Inspector?
Yes, I get the point. Thank you, Mr. Paxton. That explains it.
But how did you find out about the theatre?
I'm investigating a murder case, sir. It's my job to find out about all sorts of things.
Yes. Yes, well, just to keep the record straight, I'm not having a wild affair with Mrs. Stewart, if that's what you're thinking.
Tell me about Miss Valeska, sir.
What do you mean?
How did you come to hear about her?
Mr. Stewart made a will, and apparently he's left most of his...
Yes, I know about the will, sir.
Well, that's how I heard about Miss Valeska. Nigel Mills, the solicitor, saw Mrs. Stewart, and she sent for me.
Why?
She wants me to have a chat to Miss Valeska, to try and come to some arrangement with her.
About the will?
Yes.
But isn't that a job for a lawyer? I should have thought that Mr. Mills was the
I'm
person.
afraid Mrs. Stewart isn't particularly fond of lawyers at the moment, Inspector.
I see what you mean, sir.
Now, may I ask you a question?
Yes, of course.
Why did you come here tonight?
Well, I should have thought that was obvious. I came to see Miss Valeska.
Yes, but why?
Geoffrey Stewart was shot. He was murdered.
Yes, we know that.
And I want to make sure, quite sure, sir, that the same thing doesn't happen to Miss Valeska.